We are excited to be here. I am very honored to have been asked to moderate today. You know, I could sit here and really read a great deal about the incredible members of our team here, but I'm really going to break with tradition and just ask them to introduce themselves and really highlight what they did in the military, because I think that this has a lot more than me just reading. So I'm going to start off here with my incredible... So first off, you should all feel incredibly safe because there are 3 Marines up here. So I'm just going to put that out here. So Juanita, why don't we start off with you, please?
Working? Okay. So my name is Juanita Sepulveda, and I am a United States Marine veteran. Fortunately, they took me. They saw value in me. I served to the rank of corporal, which is an E4. I started out in supply, which majority of women back then started. I moved over to warehousing, and I ended up in logistics. And logistics was one of those things that I really enjoyed because I got to tell everybody else what to do, and they had to do it without questioning, especially when you had wonderful leadership like, you know, Major General and the colonels, and they saw your value. They groomed what was in you. And I couldn't be a better person without them. So I could say I learned from my additional family, which is the military family.
Thank you, Angie.
Yeah, Freddie.
Very well done. Thank you for your service. I'm Freddie Valenzuela, and I was raised on the west side of San Antonio. Spent 33 years 11 months and 1 day in the United States Army. Tremendous gift for me. Both my grandmothers are Gold Star mothers, which means they lost their sons in combat. My father and all his brothers and everybody in the family has served in the United States military in one form or another. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine. So we cover the globe, if you will, for service. I think all of us would do it all over again. For the family, if anything, growing up in San Antonio, my dad's from Marfa, my mother's from Refugio, Texas. But what it did for us, the family, is it allowed us, by virtue or through the GI Bill, on the return from the war, to get educated. And I think that generation, the greatest generation here in San Antonio, turned the corner and was a pivotal time in our generations. So my father passed it on to me, and I did that. And again, I do it all over again. But I'm just excited to be before this audience. And all the hands were raised. I thank you for those who are serving. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you, Angie. Thank you for the introduction. Juan Ayala, native of El Paso, Texas. I am a first-generation American. My parents are from León, Guanajuato. And I came to the States when I was about 7 and learned English when I was about 8. But the Marine Corps, I came in 76 and retired in 15. I joined the Marine Corps out of a sense of patriotic duty, and I wanted to see the world. I had never left El Paso, Texas. I did, and after 36 years of service, I had been to about 60 countries. And so to me, that was, and I met some incredible people in the military, which I still miss. And I'm very fortunate to be here amongst you. My last 7 years in the military, I was deployed to Iraq 4 years of the 7. So it's good to be sitting here with all of you. And again, I appreciate all of you in the audience. Thank you.
Great. And I'm Angie Salinas, and I'm also a United States Marine. I am a native Texan as well. I come from was born in Alice. My family are from the ranchitos down in the valley. 39 years. And I'm Major General, Corporal, 8 years. Incredible service, and we are incredibly proud to have served. But let me just add to the resumes. Took her GI Bill, came back as a graduate of Texas A&M University, earned her Master's of Science and a Master's of Education, sits on the Foundation Board of Directors of Texas A&M University, sits on the board with Center for Health Services, SAM Ministries, a contributor of our community. Freddie is created the Charter Leadership Academy on the west side of San Antonio, Texas, appointed by the mayor to be the interim president and CEO of San Antonio Housing Authority, designated as executive director of the Bexar County Housing Authority. He's been on community boards, Communities in School, Haven for Hope, works with homeless veterans, Boy Scouts, St. Mary's University Board of Trustees, USAA, Federal Savings Bank. We're talking about people that come back into the community and does great things. Juan has already told you about being a native. He is also works for the director. He is the director of Military and Veteran Affairs here in the Department of the City of San Antonio. He serves as the city's liaison to the military, supporting the mayor, city council, and the city's department. He works closely with the military and civilian partners to ensure military missions and installations continue to thrive. He's working on making sure that we have a direct route from San Antonio to Washington, D.C. We come back and we do other things. I'm your CEO of Girl Scouts of Southwest Texas. What we do, and this is really the key element, is veterans continue to come back and do and serve our communities. So with that, I don't know what more we can do to add to our resume, but we want you to know that we love our city of San Antonio. So with that, let me ask a couple good questions. I'm incredibly honored and just proud because when I came back here to San Antonio in 2013, when I retired, I really didn't know anybody here in San Antonio because I had been out wandering around the nation in the different countries, and my family chose that we wanted to come back to San Antonio. But literally I came here and I felt like I had come home because this is Military City, USA. But I'm going to start off with you, Freddie.
That's me.
Just in a little bit of short time, General, will you share what led you to join and how military service kind of shaped you?
Yeah, real quick. My father and my mother worked in the courthouse for 37 years. My mother was a juvenile probation officer, and my dad, after the war, became a court coordinator, and his final mission was with Judge Reed. Interestingly enough, Judge Reed retires, my dad retires, and my daughter, who was appointed a judge, came in right behind the same courtroom. So we have a legacy of law enforcement and giving back to in that arena. But having said that, I was a knucklehead on the west side. Did get to Jefferson High School, which was a big deal in the old days. Unfortunately, I got in trouble, and I was on what we call adjudicated probation, where my parents kind of did me a favor, if you will, joined the reserves for a year, went on to St. Mary's University, and got my degree. I tell that story because si se puede. I mean, anyone, particularly out of the west side, surrounded by Lackland Air Force Base, surrounded by all the military bases in San Antonio, everybody wore a uniform, and it was the big deal. And so how could you not join the military with all your relatives and all the community? So I thank God I was gifted by the community, by my family, and the rest is history. And again, I'd do it all over again.
Yeah. So Juanita, you and I were a common bond because we were both enlisted. So what drove you to the recruiting office?
So my story is, I'm first generation everything. And I say everything. First generation to graduate high school, associates, bachelor's, master's, entrepreneur, military. What drove me to the military was I'm a migrant child, born in Mexico, and I was always told be cosmetology, beautician, work in the fields, raise a family, and do things. But when you're a child, you see things, you get introduced things to, you aspire to become it. And I saw a doctor. I saw an anesthesiologist, and I thought, well, I'd like to do that. And I was told by my mathematician, by my math teacher, you'll never make it. So I really strived to achieve that. I graduated high school, top 25% on my own. I moved out so I could learn how to do physics and chemistry. Got accepted to a junior college, Now, I didn't know this, so any of you who are younger than me, don't do this. This is what you don't do. You don't apply just to one university. I applied to Texas A&M, and I guess they found mercy in me and accepted me. And I got accepted, became an Aggie, but nobody ever tells you how to pay for it, right? Got accepted into pre-med. Yes. Family's excited. But being first generation, they don't know how to guide you. They want to, but they don't have that point of reference. So someone says, well, join the military. I said, great. What can you do with that? He says, well, you can get your education, but don't join the Marine Corps. Well, why? You'll never make it. So that's the only one I went to. And I discovered not just the love that I have for the Marine Corps, but that the love the Marine Corps has for me. And the value that they saw in me and the value that they taught me to put back into my community. I wasn't this delinquent child. It's okay, sir. But I was pretty close to it, right? Because I wasn't seen. I wasn't heard. And the military reminded me that I brought value. I am to be heard. I am to be seen. And I think it was Madeleine Albright that said, it took a long time to find my voice, and I will no longer be silent. But the second part is that I want to share my voice until they find their own. And that's what the military teaches you. When they still do not have the strength to speak for themselves, we combine with them and groom them to be able to have their voice. And that is the one thing that they've helped me find.
Thank you. So, General, as you know, Mexican Americans have participated in the U.S. military for many generations. We have a great tradition. We've earned perhaps the most Medal of Honors. Currently, we account for about 17% of active duty service members. Why do you believe so many Mexican Americans have been drawn to military service? And what opportunities, both historically and today, has that service offered to our community?
Well, I think Hispanics as a whole, Mexican Americans especially, we have a call to serve. And I think that in our communities, we want to stand out. We want to serve our nation. We want to serve our communities. And I think that's something that's really innate to Mexican Americans. People ask me all the time, why do Mexican Americans join in such large numbers? And I said, no, because they tell me, because you guys like to fight. Well, maybe that's true, but I think it's a call to service, and I think that is very important. The other thing I think that's important is it's very much, the military is very much a meritocracy. You go into the military and you see that people get promoted and people advance based on their merits, which back when we came in, except for you, Juanita, she's a lot younger than we are, but the three of us, that probably was not the perception, it was not the case. So I think that's important to note. And, you know, as was mentioned, some of the bravest, hardest working folks that I had dealt with, whether it was at peace or at war, or Mexican Americans. A lot of them from Texas, a lot of them from California, but I think that is something that is going to continue because, you know, that's just who we are.
General Valenzuela, do you want to add anything to that? I mean,
I would. That's what happens when you're an Army guy surrounded by Marines. I would echo what Juan said, and I would say that I would also tell you that general officers don't die in war. And so I think we have to really appreciate that the non-commissioned officer and the enlisted soldiers, sailors, and Marines are really the ones that make our world go around. And without them, we are nothing. If you don't have a love affair for soldier and sailor and air Marines, whatever, you just don't get it. But these stud and studettes are awesome. And I would say that they come from all walks of life. They represent the American cast of society. They come in as individuals. We take them, we train them for peace and war in a collective effort. And it's all about mission, being able to balance mission and people. And Mexican Americans have a skill set like no others. There's something about our love for the military and for society, but more importantly, the country. So regardless of where we come from, what walk of life we've tread, the military just kind of gives us an opportunity of a lifetime. We take the challenges. We don't really aspire to be general officers. I think we were just blessed, us three. But by the same token, it's all about service of self. And if you know anything about the Bible, John 15:13 says that there is no greater love than one who gives his life for another. So it is service above self. And if we don't do anything as a military, the four of us, we epitomize, I believe, Apostle John in that sense.
So Juanita, what is your perspective? I mean, you also, because we have a different perspective as well, to add to that, because as a female and then as a Latina, bringing that to the military, how did you, and you're also a little bit younger, just a little bit, but. So, we've participated, so for many generations, and we account for about 17% of active duty service members. Why do you think, we're drawn to the military?
At least from my perspective, at least my family and what I was raised, we're very centered around our nucleus family. And really, honestly, it feels like family when you join the military. And even when you get out, you don't leave by yourself unless you don't plan, right? And I have to say I agree, is that we're called to service. And we gladly lay our lives down for the person to the right and the person to the left. We're torn down and completely rebuilt back up. And it's funny that you say that, because my daughter just watched a video about all the boot camps, right? And the gentleman who asked her, he says, well, what branch of service did your mother serve? He says, I think I'll wait till after we watch this. And he says, well, which one was it? He says, it was the one that was really scary. It's the Marines. But why we're called is to service. I'm going to have to echo that. We're called to service. We are raised to take care of our families, to take care of our seniors and show that respect. And it's just an extension of us. And it's just compounded of knowing that we're willing to give up our lives for our country because our country believed in us to build us.
So I know that this, and I know I'm the moderator, but I just felt that this to me was cultural. I mean, I found this calling, but it was a sense of pride. I mean, I remember going, because when I came in, I felt like, this was, like I needed money for education. I needed to, want to do something to get a skill set. This was really, when I kind of came in, it was really, I need to feed myself. And so it really was just about me first. And then when I got into the Marine Corps, it was this epiphany about, oh wow, everything my parents were trying to tell me was really, it made sense. Like, wow, nobody is going to give you anything in this world. Like, you have to earn it. And that's really the message I got from the Marine Corps. One is you have to earn it. So earning the title, at least in my lane, was you had to earn the title of Marine. So that was the end after a great deal of work. It was nobody will give you anything. Oh, wow, that's what my mom and dad were telling me. You will earn something in this world. The next thing was how important education was. That was the door. You had to have and be armed with an education. Wow, I wouldn't have gotten into the Marine Corps without the high school education. I wouldn't have become an officer without the college education. So everything in the Marine Corps, every level required more education, the more education, and then caring. And so then it was this sense of pride. And so So then I realized, and I always tell the story about going to this wedding, that I wanted to just be known as a good Marine, not a good Latina, not a good woman Marine. I just wanted to be a good Marine. I wanted Marines to follow me because I was a good Marine. But I always talk about coming back home to Texas to go to a wedding. It was a good Mexican wedding. I always told people, oh my God, the tequila was fun, the mariachis were going, it was wild, it was crazy. And then I remember people saying, they started introducing the veterans and the Marines and the people that were at the wedding, and I remember something about, hey, there's a lieutenant colonel here, and I just got this kind of elbow, and my sister saying, hey, I think they just mentioned you. And I was like, what? And I started to, I stood up, and like everybody was clapping and cheering, and I looked around the room, and there was this, like the faces of everyone there, like strangers and family, and I just saw this, like pride, and that was my moment of total epiphany. It was suddenly I realized this was not me. This was not about me. This was suddenly every hope and dream, every aspiration, every single person. I wore that uniform for them, and I represented every single person of my culture, every Mexican American, every single one that ever believed of a better day. I wore that uniform for them. And that was what I think every one of us believe. I mean, at least I did. And from that moment on, I felt it was an obligation to ensure that we pay it forward, because that's why I think we raise our hands and say, I do solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. I mean, I think that's why, we have gray hairs, and we've endured and separated ourselves from our families and our loved ones. When people say why, that's why we cry tears, why we're willing to go in harm's way. This is why. And sometimes when people, who have looked at little old men like General Valenzuela over here and ask why, and sometimes we can't say those words and explain that to people who'll never understand. But we can look at each other, and those of you who've raised the hands, and we can sometimes say to you, thank you for supporting those who supported people like us. That's why. So thank you, because I'll allow you for me saying that. So military service is not without challenges. So what do you see as the biggest challenges historically, but more importantly really today, facing Mexican Americans in military service?
Well, there's always challenges, and I recall that when I went to Officer Kennedy School as a platoon of 70, and I was the only Mexican American, I was the only Hispanic. And as I was going through the ranks, I remember that my daughter, and she asked me this after I've been in the Marine Corps for about 25 years. She says, Dad, when I was going through school, people would ask me, is your dad a Lance Corporal? Is he a corporal? Is he a sergeant? Is he a sergeant major? Is he a gunny? What is he? Not once was she ever asked, was your dad an officer? And so I think there's still, and there has been, that unconscious bias that, people that look like us cannot make it to the top. And I think that, not overtly today, but I think it still happens, and I think that's a challenge that I retired in 2015, and I remember when I used to talk to Marines that looked like me, and I said that was a challenge. Challenge the hell out of anybody that says that you can't do X, Y, or Z because of the way you look. I remember an incident, and I had a few, and I'm sure you all have them too. Back when we had fax machines, the majors list came out. And I remember we were all standing by the three of us captains standing by the fax machine waiting for the names to come out. The fax comes out, and my name was on it, Ayala, first one on the list. Thank God I picked up major. And another captain, who wasn't a friend of mine, He looked at me and says, well, you're on that list because of your last name ends in a vowel and you're a minority, which they had to peel me off the guy. But that was a very overt at that time. It's not like that now. So those are challenges, I think, that we have to inculcate in our young people, whether they go in the industry or the military, especially if they look like us. We don't put up with that, number one. And number two is we always have to work twice as hard.
Yeah. Thank you.
That was well said by Juan, but listen, what about being short and brown? I wasn't overweight, I was under tall. So even though that DNA exists...
He's better looking, though.
That DNA exists across the force. But by the way, there's 75 years of military service in this panel. 75 years plus, I'd be willing to bet. That's a hell of a lot of giving back. But I think what more important is I spent 12 years deployed, away from the family. My lovely wife from Burbank High School here in San Antonio took her away at 16 years old. And so here was a Hispanic couple in the United States Army. And there were times that we were the only ones. And the challenge came one day from a subtle discriminatory perspective. And they got my lovely wife, who's a pistol, and they said, hey, Miss Taco. And boy, she went berserk. She comes from a large family of boys, and so she knows how to fight. But nevertheless, she got this knucklehead by the throat there, pretty much. Not really the collar, but nevertheless said, "Hey, listen, if you want to refer your comments to my husband, that's your call, but don't call me." I mean, that woman sacrificed, moved 24 times. I have 2 kids. One daughter, Lori, Justice of the Fourth Court of Appeal. Went to 4 high schools in 4 years on 3 continents. Between the two of them, they went to 19 schools. So when we talk about the DNA of what we bring to the table, we also bring family, and we are family. I mean, we give ourselves for each other in a heartbeat. And being a lucky guy of serving interagency in the federal government, other agencies, if you will, I can't name them, but they have 3 letters, otherwise I gotta kill you. The key is that I know what these service folks have gone through, and it pains me for anyone to even challenge us, but that's the world we live in. Having chosen the military was the best thing for me, and no doubt for the rest of us, because either we were preordained or the Lord said it's you or whatever, but it was an honor and a blessing to give back to this country. And I know we do it all over again, but being the only Hispanic in corps and divisions, I mean, it's tough. It really is. But we didn't do it for ourselves, and I think Angie said that. It's all about, and not about promotions, it's not about anything other than serving our country. So if you take nothing away from that, I just think that that's what we live and die for.
You know, we ask about some of the bumps in the road. Let's put it that way. And I was enlisted. Major General, retired Salinas, started out enlisted. And let me tell you, I am a fan, okay? Don't tell her out loud, but the first time I saw her, she had short hair. You had just barely arrived, and Major General Ayala said, "You've got to go attend this." And being obedient, the little Marine, I'm going. And I'm sitting at the very far back, and I'm listening to her speak. And flashbacks of things, you go through in the military and why we withstood them. I had to work out not 3 times a day like the men, 4 to 5 times, sometimes twice a day, so that I could maintain. Because I ended up running PT. And when we say PT, it's not the typical PT. But when you, as a female, run that, they think that you can't push them. That was one obstacle. And of course, these aren't very long, right? And we have standards that we have to, to do. So yes, I understand the vertical challenge. But my incidences were even on base, but I had to overlook them because to be honest, I chose to sign that dotted line. I chose. Probably the biggest obstacles weren't even so much as on the military basis, because we have standards that we must all follow. But my biggest obstacle was out in public. My former husband is Caucasian, and we had gone into a Toys R Us Kids, and it's obvious that I'm Hispanic, and as I'm going up to the counter asking for service, I'm standing there and I'm being overlooked. Another person comes up and I'm overlooked. Another person comes up and I'm overlooked. My husband walks up and he says, and she immediately answers him, she says, "May I help you?" He says, "Yes, you can help me by helping my wife. She is a United States Marine, and you are being disrespectful to her."
All right, so we've talked about some obstacles. So, and again, this is a very dangerous question to ask generals, because we always know how to solve problems. All right, so what are some recommendations to overcome some of these current obstacles?
Well, I mean, we have to, so 50 million Americans, or 50 million folks in our nation are immigrants. They weren't born here. And so a lot of their kids, a lot of them are coming into the military. So from a big picture, what I see is that we have to do something, and I don't know how you do it, to break that stereotype that people that look like us cannot raise or cannot elevate to the highest levels of government, to the highest levels of the military, or to the highest levels of any organization, whether it be a nonprofit or a corporation. So I think that's hard to do. And I think the way we solve that, and the way that I've taught my kids to solve it, is the minute that they feel like they are being diminished because of who they are and what they look, which starts, I think, at the family level, is that we call it out. And I think we call it out, and I think if, whether elected officials say things, dumb things like, we're vermin or things like that, I think we call it out immediately, because that really transcends everything, not just the military. So I see it as a societal problem to solve. Right now, there's a big issue with recruiting. One more thing: 50 million Americans are immigrants. My parents, who are Mexican, and what's the culture in Mexico about joining the military? It's a lot different. I remember when I was telling my mother, "Hey, I'm going to join the Marine Corps," my mom says, "Did you commit a crime? What the heck did you do?" And I said, "No, it's a different animal here. It's completely different." So I think we have to change those perceptions, not only for those 50 million, but for society writ large.
Yeah, you heard the word culture and DNA mentioned, and I think it's a little bit deeper than that. I believe that we are so modest and so humbled, so dedicated to the cause of defending this great country, that we find ourselves not getting promoted, and it becomes, well, no sweat, no te preocupes, you didn't make it this time around. I think it's time that we stand up to be counted. I really do. If you look, and I'm not politically leaning left or right here, but everybody else speaks up, the white and the African Americans and other entities. Why can't we? It seems that we're satisfied with not speaking up and just accepting what it is that they offer. And yet, we're the most killed, most wounded, and most decorated in this country. And as Juan Ayala mentioned, immigrants. I buried 23 soldiers in my career. 20 were Hispanic. 5 only sons, 2 only daughters, 5 green card holders. They were cheerleaders, they were football players, trying to make a way of life and to go get the GI Bill to come back to get educated and help their families. I buried them in Mexico, I buried them in Colombia, Guatemala, Puerto Rico, and I'm just telling you, these guys and gals had a hell of a future. Unfortunately, it was cut short. But to look at those parents in the eyes and to tell them that I'm bringing their son and daughter from a war, and here they were 17, 18, 19, and 20 years old, is a pretty tough business. But yet the parents, none of them were bitter. They said, in essence, They died for the cause, for this great country, in some cases our adopted country, but they gave it their all, and we're proud of them, and we would give you another son or daughter if we could. I think that our humbleness, si se puede. I mean, like Juan said, you got to speak up at some point in time in your life. We haven't done it for 240 years. God forbid that we don't do it for another 240 years, because we're big-time players in this game. We just have to say it.
Just real quick, I think Freddie has a great point, and I've been saying this for a while. We need a cheerleader. We need somebody at the national level that can make waves and can tick people off and can make people think twice, kind of like what he was saying, some of our African-American leaders, some of our leaders, some of our female leaders, we need that. Do we have something like that, Mexican-American or Hispanic at this point? We don't. So I'm looking at you all. We need somebody.
Yeah, and if I could just add, the federal government declares us race-wise kind of black, white, and other. And we Hispanics, Mexican-Americans fall under the Caucasian arena.
You had to steal my thunder, didn't you?
If you break that down, we're 9 different entities: Mexican, Puerto Rican, Cuban, Central American, South American, Portuguese. I mean, we're so divided by federal government standards, but yet we're one entity. And as Juan said, if we had someone to carry us, to really say it like it is, I mean, there is a Hispanic caucus, there's an African American caucus, there's caucuses for everything, but we really need some cheerleaders. Now is the time. If we don't turn this corner, I don't know how I'm gonna face my 4 grandchildren from moving on.
Our shelf life is almost over.
Yeah.
Sorry, Freddie. So we need somebody.
No, it's quite all right, because, you gave me the perfect segue into, because, I had the pleasure of doing the essay to D.C., and for those of you who know, Dr. Flores is now the head of the census, and that was one of the questions that I posed to him. I'm always mandated to mark Caucasian, and I'm not offended by that, because my children are also part Caucasian. But when you look at me, I don't have the privileges of Caucasian. I don't get to mark Caucasian, so I refuse to mark Caucasian, and I won't put it. I'll mark it completely off. And that was my question. Juan referred to 55 million. 55 million of us here serve, and yet we're still not individually identified. I am not Caucasian. I am Hispanic. I was born in Piedras Negras, Coahuila. I obtained my citizenship. I am Mexican American, and I obtained it for my right to vote. In every given opportunity, I do. And yes, we do need cheerleaders, but we also need to be able to not be passive. Being passive will not pave the way for our children to be the continuous catalyst of change that they need to be. I've had the privilege, and I have 7 degrees. I was able to achieve 7, and I'm using every one of them in different areas. And because of these leaders right here in front of you who paved the way for me, I now have the privilege to continue to pave the way for someone else. So thank you.
So in a history lesson, obviously, so what's the most important thing you learned from your military experience?
Well, I learned a lot. I went in when I was 19. Of course, I left a lot older. But it reinforced, you learn a lot, but it reinforces something that I was taught early on, which is a work ethic. It reinforced education, like Angie was saying. My dad had a little ma and pa restaurant for 30 years. There was 9 kids. I was the oldest. We all worked in it. Talk about a work ethic. When I graduated from college, my dad said, "Okay, mijo, you're taking the restaurant." And I said, Dad, I'm doing something easy. I'm joining the Marine Corps. So, but that work ethic and kept me through, the rest of my career. So it reinforced something that I already knew. But the other thing I learned is that, El Paso, any of you been there, it's kind of isolated. It's in the middle of nowhere, really. And I hadn't dealt with a lot of people that did unless they looked like me. And so when I left, what it taught me was, and like I said earlier, I visited about 60 countries. I was embedded with the Iraqi army for a year. I advised Colombians, so I was all over the place, living with folks. What it taught me is that people are more alike than they are different. And that lesson is something that I wanted to inculcate in my kids. And I think it's really important because once people know that, or once people feel that, they see us for who we really are.
Good. Juanita, kind of break that.
I'm going to say reinforce the golden rule. You know, and I often remember the story of Ruth, where, you know, she had lost her husband and she went through treacherous, you know, terrain to return her mother-in-law back to her home. And the reason I refer to that is what I learned is the golden rule is treat others as you would like to be treated. Be respectful. Ensure that you share. Make sure that you support them. But the other part is, which is the Marine Corps, is do not take my kindness for weakness. Right? I'm here to serve, and I will always serve, and I am grateful for that opportunity. But I do remember my call to service first. But I have to remember, never forget that I too have earned the right to sit at the table. But the last thing is that as you have earned the right to sit at the table, make room for someone else, bring someone else along, because you need to groom the next leader. Always groom the next leader. And that's one of the things I did learn.
Just real quick, on grooming the next leader, we have a saying in the Marine Corps is that Arlington Cemetery is full of indispensable people. So we have to make sure that we groom them.
Yeah, and that really, you know, you take away leadership, confidence, but the biggest thing I think also that Hispanics, particularly Mexican Americans, do not have or do not get is mentorship. No one looks like us. And I think sadly enough, they have the African American groups, they have the Anglo groups, and we just don't mentor ourselves very well because we're very few. If it were not for the African Americans and the Anglo Americans mentoring me, I never would be here. I never would have made it. But why is it that we can't develop that core of mentorship to go along with the confidence and the leadership that we have? Everyone wants a Mexican American to be in their fight. I mean, it's incredible. Everybody wants us. That work ethic that Juan talked about, we're one of a kind, and we'll deliver at every turn. The biggest thing I take away from the United States military, 33 and a half years, is that I can look to my left and I can look to my right and to my rear, and I know that the brotherhood, the sisterhood is going to be there. It doesn't make a damn bit of difference if you're black, white, brown, or green, if you're Catholic, you're Episcopalian. It doesn't make a difference to us. There are no atheists in foxholes. We are awesome. We transition those skill sets to the civilian world. Unfortunately, it's a different world for us. We are not physically scarred in most cases. We're mentally scarred. We're not the same person that went in as we come out. But I think we're better for it because we can be challenged. We can move on a dime. We're just unbelievable. And all we need is an opportunity. Face the challenge. We've been there, done that, got that T-shirt. We'll deliver.
Wow. You know, I'm feeling pretty young up here after being up here with you two, but I will tell you, I want to know, I'm going to ask Juanita right now, is there anything you wish you'd known or done early in your military career?
Yes. What I didn't know is I went enlisted not knowing because I had a degree I could actually get commissioned. If I had been mentored initially, I would have been an officer. And I think I would have been a really good officer. But I don't regret it because along the way, I had the privilege of having great leaders. and I had the privilege of transitioning some of those skill set into someone I would mentor. And to this day, I still, I have the privilege of still being able to connect with them. But that would be it, knowing that I could have been commissioned and been educated on that. The other thing, too, is the value of constantly reading. Though we read in the military and we're tasked to read, but just constantly be starving to read anything, whether it's the news, whether it's self-improvement, whether it's how to purify water, or how to correctly change a diaper. I mean, we think about the minuscule things, but reading will fill the gaps that you may not have if you don't get that education. I mean, we're in the best university we possibly can be, the library, and it's free.
Great. All right, General Valenzuela. I know it's a long time ago, but can you?
I even forgot the
Can
question.
you go all
but
the way back there, maybe?
I even forgot the question.
Just,
That's what happens
Do you
when you get
remember the
old.
question? You want me to tell you again?
Sure.
Okay, I know, short time, yeah. So.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, can you remember way back to the early days of something that you wish you would have done, or?
I have no regrets.
No?
I made a lot of mistakes in my life. Lucky for me that the Lord had a vision for me, if you will. But no regrets, I have none. Do I wish I could do some other things a little bit differently? Yeah.
Like,
Losing
wish you'd been a Marine instead? Maybe?
Yeah, I wish I
No,
could have been a
no,
Marine.
yeah.
I think, you know what, I think the hardest part, this is kind of interesting. My lovely wife lost both her parents while we were overseas and in the military. And I kind of promised myself, I said, God, I really put her through that. I mean, it's incredible. And she said, well, that's not going to happen to you. So I came home and I left the Army early, believe it or not, after 33 years. And she said, let's take care of your folks. I really learned to appreciate what my parents had done for me, although I didn't kind of accept it, if you will. I was kind of a prodigal son. But nevertheless, I came home, and she and I took care of them for 12 years. That was harder than going to war, and I've been in a few. No, I mean that. You got to maneuver, you got to navigate the medical system, nursing homes, everything. And we did that for 12 years. So I guess the word I would leave you with is sacrifice. Don't worry about us. Hell, that's what we signed up for, and we've got it. But I will tell you, I think we're a heartbeat away from a gunfight. And what I mean by that is if you look at the axis of evil, if you look to China and you look to North Korea and you look to Russia and you look to Iran and all these proxies and stuff, this is tough. And if you go home tonight, you kneel down and say a prayer for those that are in harm's way, because it's something's going to happen, unfortunately. I'm not being pessimistic. I'm just being honest. But 1/3 of our military is below the poverty level. Those 20 soldiers that I buried of the 23 could have been on food stamps. That's who defends your country. And so what I take away is that those guys and gals did everything we asked and more, and were willing to do it again, and they don't want anything in return other than to know that they were proud to do it. So I just leave you with that message, but it's no regrets. Do it again.
So with that, do you all, will just kind of last question here is, do you have any final thoughts that you want to share as we go through?
Yeah, well, I'm very proud of my service, and after 36 years, I still get asked, do you miss it? Of course I miss it. And it's not the deployments of separation from my family. What it is, I miss the men and women that I got to serve with, whether they're American men and women, Marines, whatever service, and all the foreigners that I got to serve with. So I'm very lucky that I got to serve, and I'm very, very lucky now that I'm serving. So I tell the veterans in the city of San Antonio, there's 1,800 veterans in our staff out of 13,000, is that we served our nation, we served our country, and the ones that are still working for the city of San Antonio are still serving their community. And so I think that's something that's really important, and I think that's something the community needs to think about. I hope Freddie's wrong about the gunfight. My daughter is on active duty. I have 2 sons-in-law that are on active duty, and I have a niece that's on active duty. And so one of my sons-in-law is in Poland right now, which is, as you can imagine, he's a SEAL. We always worry about him, so, keep that in your prayers. But anyway, thank you for the opportunity to speak to the audience.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for allowing us to be able to come and share some of our stories and some of our laughter as we poke at each other sometimes too. But Mr. Valenzuela, I really hope that what you're predicting doesn't come true, because my son is also Special Forces. He is Green Beret. And though I am prepared to lose him at war, I'd much rather lose him at war than it's something needless and wasteful, like a drive-by shooting or a drunken driver. What I hope is that you do not forget that you have a voice, like I reminded you earlier. I hope that you continue to mentor others and remind them that once your voice has been silenced, that they must pick up the torch and continue and duplicate that, and duplicate it fiercely. Because we are the catalyst that will change, and will change for good. We are the community that sits here now, but we are grooming our future. We are grooming our next leaders. And just like General Ayala said, we're looking for cheerleaders to keep us going, but we're looking for stable, strong, focused leaders that will stay committed and will always, always champion for the right things. But for me, it has been a sheer pleasure to sit on this stage with these amazing leaders. It was a true privilege to be allowed to sit up here with them and share the stage with them. So thank you.
We chose the profession. All of you chose your own. We're just happy and glad that we got the opportunity, because it was a gift from God to be able to serve our country. I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out. The fact that some of you raised your hand, you understand exactly what we have tried to articulate in a story of sorts. But we're all in this game together. And so it was our honor. We'd do it again. But if it were not for you coming out today, I thank you from the bottom of my heart.
So we're very excited. Thank all 3 of you for joining us today. So one of this also, again, is our opportunity to serve, as we said. But we're also kind of at a tipping point, because, as you know, all the military services are grappling with young people joining the military. And it is very difficult. I spent a great deal of my time in military recruiting in the Marine Corps. And if you look at the numbers, and you probably read the Express News and the stories of why it's a challenge, the differences are today is that many of the opportunities, which is education, used to be the big benefit. You could get your college education, but today you can go down to Starbucks, and if you're going to be a barista, you can get a full 4-year scholarship to work at Starbucks and also get your college degrees. So getting the opportunity to get your medical benefits, you can get 30 days vacation, all the same opportunities that the military recruiter will offer you, plus, oh my gosh, this physical fitness opportunity and this opportunity to have someone offer you discipline. And for some reason that no longer resonates with the young person that loves to stay in bed, right? Those children of yours who I used to say, if you'll just let me have him for 12 weeks, I promise you, he knows where his waistband will be, and he'll understand where the dishes go when he's done at the end of his meal, and all those great promises that we would make. And the problem is that we no longer have people who will say, this is important. And so we ask each and every one of you, because people expect us to say, what are you going to do with your life? This is a commitment. And we really do need every one of you to really be advocates to say you need to go and do this. An 18-year-old going and serving their country for 4 years. We're not talking about going out and doing, and we understand that we're also asking parents to potentially have to go into harm's way, but they come back better citizens. And this is really what we're saying. This is, you grow up fast because we're talking about accountability, but this is coming back into our communities, armed to be adults who understand about giving back, getting their education, getting all the things we're talking about, but being better citizens. So thank you so much for your time. We appreciate everything that you do. Have a great day.